Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hye Kim, and I am a current senior. I will be giving a presentation on my research paper, Restoring Our Waters by Going Back to Our Cultural Values. I watched a movie in oceanography class that inspired me to take care of our environment, and especially our water. So when I had the chance to go to China, I wanted to incorporate that into my research paper. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Jack Kay for giving me an opportunity to explore my passion of water and social science. I also want to thank Dr. Chan and Dr. Leonard for being amazing mentors throughout the whole process. So there is a serious problem with the water quality today. There used to be beautiful wetlands and fresh flowing waters near our school, but they are now all contaminated with chemical activities and large amount of trash. Our High Lake in Yunnan, China, is the second largest lake in the highlands of Yunnan. It was a beautiful lake that children used to swim in and fish for food, but the water quality decreased because of factors such as the phosphate from laundry detergent. Like an old fisherman, Li Yonghua said, "No one fishes or swims in the lake now, and majority of the fish are extinct." But this is not just a scientific problem, it is also a social problem. I was given the privilege to study abroad during my second semester of junior year to Yunnan province of China, but I wanted to make something out of this opportunity. When I heard about the K Fellowship program, I thought it would be interesting to write a research paper connecting both China and Hawaii. So I started my research with one of my mentors, Dr. Leonard in China, and the rest with Dr. Chan in Hawaii. This research topic interested me not only because of my love for social science, but also because it allowed me to understand cultural values and find deep connections with the older generations had with their traditions and community. So this was acquired through the research of books, internet, websites, and many interviews. Water, one of the most important elements for all of nature, is connected to many cultures and traditions of the past. Some religions are devoted to worship the importance and value of water. Varying from country to country, in Hawaii and in the province of Yunnan, water is a different type of value for each person. But in the same way, these cultures and traditions have decreased significantly over the generations. By unifying the community once more with the universal idea of the importance of water will aid the increase of water quality like the past generation. This research describes the difference of social aspects of water and traditionally what kinds of cultural values water carried through people in Yunnan and Hawaii. It concludes by discussing solutions of how water quality can be restored by bringing back historical values passed down from generations. So Native Hawaiians and local Chinese both had a universal religion or belief that allowed for cleaner waters. Native Hawaiians believed in the Hawaiian gods, Kane and Kanaloa, who were two of the four primary gods believed to be the ones going around the islands and sustaining life in the waters, creating water sources. They were also known to go around desolate lands and test the generosity of the people if they deserved the water or not. They would dry up all the lands if they were not offered a drink first. The water was a gift from the akua, or the gods, so there was no ownership, but a system of sharing. The religion and customs enforced the Hawaiians to conserve and allowed them to be privileged to have water. As for China, the water gods that they believed in was different from the other surrounding villages. It is not the common Buddhist or Taoist god, but a local community god. There were two famous wells in this area, but one of these wells were located in their village. They believed in Shefu Nainai, who lives in the village as well. The water acts as fresh drinking water for all the members of the village, but if anyone was to misuse or dirty the water, then it was said that the water would dry out and the villagers would not have any source of fresh water. Both Hawaii and China are very similar in that they both conserved and took care of their water because of the universal belief within their community. But right now, not everyone believes in the Hawaiian gods or local Chinese god. Of course, religion cannot be forced on someone, and we cannot force someone to believe in this god just so that they start conserving water. But children are not being taught about these cultures and traditions that could potentially lead them to conserve and protect their waters. It is not mandatory for students to learn about Hawaiian history or their local history. Teaching children about these values the ancestors of these lands carried throughout generations and the sharing community values are important for their actions in the future. Next is the unique land division. Hawaii used to follow the Ahupua'a system, which is the land division from shoreline all the way up to the top of the mountain. This was a key unit of land management. Within one Ahupua'a, there would be farmland, a section of the ocean, and a section of the mountain. When a fisherman or craftsman produced a certain amount of goods, then they would use that to trade goods with their ohanas or extended family members. Each member of the Ahupua'a had a special job like an expert farmer, fisherman, or other role. This way, the community living under one Ahupua'a was able to self-sustain themselves. They believed that working together as a community was a process of success. In China, they used to share lands altogether depending on the district. A group of people were assigned to be in charge of the Arhai Lake, and a group of people were in charge of the farming lands in the mountains. Each district consisted of people in charge of fishing or farming. They would trade the food and eat together. Like if Native Hawaiians, they cared about working within a community. But the land division now is not so much like this anymore. There is a separation between the low and highlands, which limits communication. The water that comes down from the streams is first used by the people living in higher districts, which affects the quality of water that the lower districts receive. The lack of communication and the awkward separation of the lands create more division among the groups of people who should have the same values as a community. There should be an implementation for better communication between the people living along the same stream so that there is more connectedness in a community and preservation for cleaner waters. If we promote a goal, protecting water, and if everyone can relate to that same goal to create an incentive for people to care, then we can bring communities together although we may be living in different places. The values shared in China and Hawaii are mostly the same, all relating to working as a community. There were 5 main values that the Hawaiians shared as a community: ohana, lokahi, laulima, kuleana, and aloha. Being Hawaiian meant that they needed to nurture and care for the community. The word ohana meant family defined as a group of close people who shared everything from land to water. Sharing is a central value within the community because it prevents individual decline. Lokahi means harmony. Lokahi allows the community to understand and create a feeling of unison among each other. Laulima, cooperation, allows for sustainability to happen. The community used laulima to help each other and cooperate the uses of natural resources. Kuleana, responsibility, allows Hawaiians to do their job. Each person is responsible for a certain part of the community. And if one falls, then the community will not be able to work together. Finally, most important of all, aloha, which is love and care. The united feelings of love and care within the community allows people to share and sustain the islands and resources. Each of these values play a big role within the community of Native Hawaiians. If we share these values when interacting with others and show a caring heart with our behavior and actions, then we will be able to spread these community values that our ancestors had to our generation now. Organizations are making efforts to bring communities together with the sharing value, water. Waiakea Hawaiian volcanic water demonstrates a strong belief of Malama Ika Aina, which means to respect and care for the land. There is a Hawaiian culture-based public charter school on Oahu called Halau Kumana. Every year, it is within the school's curriculum to take the students, go out to Makiki Stream, and learn about the importance of water and community surrounding it. Inspired by what they learned, the students organize stream cleanups, help beautify the land and waters. They reflect back onto the Hawaiian cultural values of water and put the knowledge into action. The students are able to have a deeper connection with nature through environments of studies, creating a unified community. There are also organizations such as Plastic Free and Sustainable Coastlines who help alleviate some of the problems of low water quality, but they are not just promoting to protect water, but also bringing the community together to cultivate connectivity and have a belief that water should be valued. There are many other organizations that I do not know of but would love to know more about. In an interview with a man, Jacob Aki, who practices Hawaiian culture, states that water is still used for traditional ceremonies and is an essential part of what he does as a practitioner. He does kava ceremonies, which cements new friendships and relationships. Water is also used for Hawaiian chants. These traditions have not disappeared but are decreasing significantly. In China, there are local community groups who work together to protect the lake. There has been a law recently passed through the government that stopped farming activities several kilometers away from the lake. This law was passed in order to protect Arhai and to stop the pollution from the chemical fertilizers that the farmers used. Many people could have been angered by this law passed because it was a source of their income, and now they cannot do anything with the lands. But when I interviewed two people in this situation, they stated, "This law is fine as long as it's helping to protect Arhai." Both of these community members genuinely want to help and preserve and save Arhai, even if it meant sacrificing their precious farming lands. In the end, if we teach our children the traditional values and history of our ancestors, create a connecting link between communities living up and downstream, and promote a community value through our behaviors in interacting with others, then we will be able to alleviate a part of the water pollution and help increase the water quality. When I was researching this topic, I realized that technology, development, and the surrounding environment is very important in maintaining a connection with nature. While I was interviewing many older generation men and women, I heard many stories of their childhood. They would always be outside the house, helping their parents on the farm, hiking up mountains, or swimming in lakes and streams with their friends. Their activities always required them to be connected with nature. But comparing these stories with us today, the environment is very different. We do not go outside to have fun just because we have our smartphones or computers. Most of our activities allow us to stay inside our houses. Our relationship with nature is disconnected because of the lack of incentive to go outside. This was the same experience for me. But because of that one step I took outside my box, I realized how important nature, especially water, is to us. I believe that if everyone tries to take one step outside once, such as participating in beach cleanups or community service activities, it will become a life-changing experience. So there are so many opportunities out there, so go out and reach. For the next K Fellowship Scholars, as a piece of advice, find something that you really want to look deeper into. Yes, this whole process does take a lot of time and effort, and it will be harder if you choose a topic that you are not really interested in. But when you're delving into a field you genuinely love and enjoy learning about, it will be satisfying and worth your time. So find your passion and go after it. Thank you. I just wanted to make some acknowledgments. So I wanted to acknowledge John and Violet Cave Fellowship for funding this whole research for me, and Dr. Chan, Dr. Leonard, Dr. Flower for being amazing teachers and mentors for me. Iolani School, Sidwell Friends School, CFS students, and the Linden Center for helping me to go to China and have an amazing experience. Wendo, Lenore Ohe, Jacob Aki, Lee Liu Hu, Lee Yonghua for being great interviewees, and my parents for supporting me through this research. And thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarisa Choy.
And my name is Kyla, Kohara, and our presentation is on using EM Bokashi balls as a bioremediator in the All-Wide Canal.
And we wanted to thank Jack K for giving us this opportunity to research something that we were really passionate about, and we also wanted to thank him for funding our project and giving us the monetary support to carry out this experiment and try to make it a success.
Okay, so the All-Wide Canal is known to be disgustingly brown and really foul-smelling, and this is known especially well for Iolani students. And there's actually a dozen more issues that needs to be addressed in the canal. And just to name a few, there are several areas in the canal that have extremely low dissolved oxygen levels, and that's a good indicator of just how poor the water quality is, because oxygen is needed to sustain aquatic life. And it is also reported extremely high levels of heavy metals and pathogens and overabundance of nutrients. And as you can see in the chart on the right of the screen, those blue spikes show just how much bacteria is in the water near the McCully Street Bridge. And that small green line at the bottom is what the state deems as a safe level. Some of these bacteria can actually cause really deadly infections, including like Vibrio phoneficus, which has actually been lethal for a man who fell in the Alwai. And another issue is the sediment buildup that occurs at the bottom of the canal, and this can be attributed to rainwater runoff carrying sediments and dirt and street grime and letting it settle to the bottom of the water. So Sarisa and I are part of the school's paddling club, and we've been paddling in the Alwai Canal since 9th grade. And we also participate in the Save the Alwai Club. So we have a really strong connection and commitment to improving the canal and the water. And it was around February of this year that we entered a design challenge that was funded by UH Manoa. And along with Daisy Cheng, we created a system to try to improve the Alwai.
So, like Kyla said, we were doing the Alawai Design Challenge, and one of the things that we had to research was ecosystem restoration. And we found the idea of Bokashi balls, and we decided that this would be a really interesting thing to research for our K Fellowship. And luckily, there was the research during the summer, and so we seized the opportunity, and we signed up so that we could do further research of EM Bokashi balls. So there have been successful uses in the past, and sadly there has been no credible literature about these informations or these events that have happened. But one of them was the successful cleanup of the Dotonbori River in Japan. And after the earthquake, the river was in a really bad state, and so people decided to actually make Bokashi balls and throw a bunch of them in the river, and surprisingly, they actually worked. And another event was when Bokashi balls were made on Earth Day in the Philippines, and they were actually thrown into the Angano River. And these are some women in the Philippines who are passing down Bokashi balls in order to throw them into the river. And the next one was actually, there were a group of girls who wanted to test whether or not Bokashi balls work, so it was really similar to our project. And so they tested it, and following that, they actually made some Bokashi balls and they threw it into the Kladnica River in Poland. But for both of these, there are actually no given results in the literature, and so that was a downside to it. There was also this picture of the Todaji Temple in Japan, and it's a very huge, significant difference between the color of water starting from brown and turning to basically clear.
So finally, what is a Bokashi ball? It was invented by Dr. Teruyo Higa, and he created this EM solution, which is which stands for effective microorganisms. And so what that is just a solution of a bunch of different microbes that he found could survive cohesively in the same kind of environment, and that each bacteria had its own purpose and function to treat the contaminated water. So he had to go through several trials to create the perfect solution, and then when he finally did, he had created a bioremediation solution. And so bioremediation is the waste management technique of using microbes or biological organisms to neutralize or remove contamination from water or soil. So what he did with this product was he mixed it with soil and molasses, and that essentially created the perfect environment for these microbes to become active out of its dormant state and multiply. And you can tell that that process is working if that white mold becomes apparent on top of the balls.
So what is EM solution? Well, we'd actually like to thank Hiro Michinaga for giving us the solution and for teaching us how to make the balls. And we'd also like to thank Craig Nelson for running the solution and actually telling us what is in the solution. And so something that was interesting is that the effective microorganisms that are on the bottle aren't the same as what Dr. Nelson ran for us. And so it's prevalent, or lactobacillus is actually really prevalent in the EM solution, coming at 42.7%. And lactobacillus is something that controls fermentation of foods such as yogurt, cheese, sauerkraut, pickles, beer, cider, kimchi, and other fermented foods. And the next most prevalent effective microorganism was acetobacteria, which is an acetic acid bacteria, and it also converts ethanol to acetic acid when there's oxygen. And the main take-home of this is that the effective microorganisms that were labeled on the EM solution was actually pretty different from what was actually sequenced and given to us by Dr. Nelson.
So in our research, we found out what the EM solution is supposed to do, and it claimed to eat up carbon matter and sediments, and so that would be what reduces the sludge in the Alwai Canal. And it's also supposed to reduce turbidity of the water, which is the cloudiness and the suspended particles in the water that is preventing light from reaching the bottom of the canal. And finally, we found that it's supposed to reduce the pH of the water to be more acidic, and we hypothesized that that's going to be because the acetic acid that's in the solution is multiplying, and the acetic acid has a natural pH of 3.86. So while researching these balls, we realized that there's actually no literature that's reliable and that has data or statistics that prove that this actually works. So naturally, we became very skeptical. And we proposed the question, can Bokashi balls and EM solution be used as a bioremediator to break down carbon matter and reduce the pH of the water?
So we have some pictures of us going out on the boat and collecting water and sludge, and it was a very long process because we used the YSI and we tested the water in the Alwai. And we actually have a video of us collecting sludge. So when collecting water and sludge, we actually had to collect water from the bottom of the Alwai, so we had to get it from the bottom and rather than the top. And we also had that, which would help us to collect the sludge at the bottom and then bring it back up. And from this video, you can tell that it was actually pretty stinky.
So before we committed to a final experimental design, we set up a pilot, and we took the water that we collected and the sludge from the first time we went out on the boat, and we split it into 2 tanks. And we put one of the Bokashi balls that we had made into one of the tanks and let that sit in the dark for about a week and a half. And then when we came back to check on it, we saw this happen, and we were pretty shocked and demoralized because the water turned a lot browner in the one we added the Bokashi ball to. And then you might be able to tell at the very surface of the water, there's also a thick layer of mold that formed. And we were lucky enough to get some advice from Dr. Frank, who is a microbiologist, and she gave us some advice on how to improve our experiment. So she told us to research the bacteria that's in the solution more, and then also make sure that we're using the right proportion of Bokashi ball to the tanks. And this actually helped us a lot because we realized that all the bacteria that's in the solution is meant to thrive in an anaerobic environment. So that means without air, and we have a lot of air at the surface of our tanks. So we made some adjustments and then set up a final.
So for our final experiment, we divided the tank into 3 sections, with tanks 1, 4, and 7 having all-o-wai water and sludge, and tanks 2, 5, and 8 having all-o-wai water, sludge, and a Bokashi ball, and tanks 3, 6, and 9 having all-o-wai water, sludge, and just EM solution. And we wanted to make sure that these 3 experiments were right next to each other so that we could see whether or not there was a significant difference between the 3 of them. And lastly, we had a control of sterile water, which we also took data from. And we made our experiment anaerobic by adding baby oil to the top of each tank, and that would prevent oxygen from leaving the tanks. And so it was an improvement from our pilot experiment. We also, to measure the decrease in sludge, we had a ruler for each tank, and we submerged the ruler into the tank, and we measured the sludge in centimeters. And to prevent cross-contamination, we had a ruler for each and every tank, and we collected data every other day. To look at the change in salinity, pH, and turbidity, we used a YSI to test all these things, and we also collected data every other day. And when using the YSI, we kept it submerged in the water for about 5 minutes so we could get more accurate results rather than leaving it in the water for a shorter amount of time. And during this experiment, we also replaced the pH probe because we weren't sure whether or not it was working, but then we replaced it, and then it was much better. And this is a before and after slide of our tanks. And the top row is our before, and then the bottom row is after. And then, like I said, tanks 1, 4, and 7 had all-o-wai water and sludge. Tanks 2, 5, and 8 had all-o-wai water, a Bokashi ball, and sludge. And tanks 3, 6, and 9 had all-o-wai water, sludge, and EM solution. And from these pictures, it shows that the middle one, which is tank 2, 5, and 8, looks more cloudier than the rest of the tanks, and that's the one with the Bokashi ball in it.
So to analyze our data, we collected each day's data, and we averaged the 3 sets for each tank, and then we plotted these changes over time. And what we found was that there's actually a trend in all the tanks, including our control of just all-o-wai water and sludge without anything added to it, that the salinity, turbidity, and the pH all slowly decreased over time. And so we didn't have any positive results for the Bokashi balls in those. However, we actually saw the best results from the change in depth of sludge. We noticed that the average depth of sludge to begin with in the tanks with the Bokashi balls were all higher, and those are actually the ones that ended up with the lowest amount of sludge in the end. So it was kind of interesting. The rate of change for the Bokashi ball was greater than the tanks with just EM solution, but we did further analysis and ran a t-test, and we found that it's not actually statistically significant enough for us to say that the Bokashi ball was the factor that changed the sludge depth. But we think that if we had more time to collect our data rather than just 1 month, we would have seen stronger results. So another set of data that we collected was the bacteria. We pushed 60 cc's of water through a 0.2 micron filter, and that would collect all the bacteria that's in the water. And we froze this and collected more every other week. And what we wanted to do with this data was see if the bacteria microbial community would change over time. But unfortunately, we also didn't have the time to do that. So that's something we would want to do for further research.
So reflecting on our experiment, we realized that our pilot experiment was not anaerobic, which we wanted it to. And so then when we did put the baby oil in the final experiment and tested with the YSI, the repetitive testing with the YSI may have taken out baby oil, which may have slowly turned the experiment from an anaerobic environment to an aerobic environment. And also, when we were measuring the depth of sludge, that may have moved around the sludge when using the ruler and putting it in and out, and that could have affected turbidity. And another thing to take into consideration was that we collected data during the summer, and this could have been completely different if we collected data during the winter. And we also didn't have enough time, like Kyla said, to do our research because we didn't get to test the bacterial community. And there was also no credible data or literature on this because it's fairly a new thing, and people haven't been able to scientifically prove that EM Bokashi balls work. So our advice to those who decide to do research in the future is that we suggest to take a lot of pictures and be organized. So whether it involves having a Google Drive with a bunch of folders in it from each day that you took data would be really helpful because it keeps you organized and you can always go back and refer to it. And we also suggest to ask a lot of questions because there's no bad questions when doing research, and being curious about a topic is really good. And another thing we suggest is to do a practice experiment or a few of them because the pilot experiment that we did really helped us, and we learned that putting baby oil on it would turn our environment from an aerobic one to an anaerobic one. And lastly, we suggest to stay motivated through it all. Even if you face hardships, you should still pursue it because you found interest in it, and you still do, but don't let hardships bring you down. Lastly, we would like to thank Mr. K, as we said in the beginning, for giving us the opportunity and letting us do research during the summer and also funding our project. And we also want to thank Dr. Chan for mentoring our topic, and Dr. Nelson for sequencing the EM solution, and Dr. Frank for giving us advice how to change our experiment from an aerobic one to an anaerobic one, and Mr. Donald Nguyen, who's right there, for helping us to put in and take out the boat from the Alawai, as well as transporting the water and the very heavy sludge from the Alawai all the way to Sullivan. And that is a picture of us with him, so thank you so much for coming with us many times. And thank you for listening to our presentation.